I hope everybody's doing good tonight. Tonight, I have a story for y'all that I wanted to read. It's about living with bipolar. Elena sat across from the psychiatrist, her hands folded too tightly in her lap, thumbs rubbing against each other like they were trying to start a fire. So, the doctor said gently, glancing at her notes, based on what you've described, your mood patterns, the periods of elevated energy, the crashes, and the persistent anxiety, is consistent with bipolar disorder, along with generalized anxiety. Elena nodded. She didn't cry. She didn't ask any questions. She just nodded, like someone being told the weather forecast, partly cloudy, chance of storms. At 30, Elena thought she knew herself. She was the reliable one, the planner, the friend who showed up early, who remembered birthdays, who triple checked reservations. The people described as a little anxious, but in the productive way. She had built a life around control. Lists, calendars, reminders, backup plans. She thought her anxiety was just her personality, and the other parts, she didn't talk about those. Like this week, where she felt electric, not happy exactly, but charged, like her thoughts had been plugged into something bigger. She'd sleep 4 hours at night and wake up refreshed, ideas stacking on top of each other faster than she could write them down. She signed up for classes, reorganized the apartment at midnight, messaged people she hadn't spoken to in 4 years because suddenly maintaining every connection felt urgent and necessary. And underneath it all, her anxiety didn't go away. It grew teeth. You're doing too much. What if you can't keep this up? What if you ruin everything? So she'd go faster, do more, fix everything before it could fall apart. And then inevitably it did. Not all at once, never all at once. First the energy would flicker, then her thought would slow down just enough for one anxiety to catch up. Every unfinished task became evidence of failure. Every unanswered message became proof she was disappointing someone. Her chest would tighten, her heart began racing, even while her body felt like it was sinking. At her worst, she would sit on the edge of her bed, staring at her phone, paralyzed. Reply. Just reply. It takes 2 seconds. But her fingers wouldn't move because what if she said the wrong thing? What if she sounded stupid? What if? She put the phone down. I'll do it later. Later really never came. For years she explained it away. Burnout, stress. I just need a better routine. I'm just an anxious person. The idea that this is something else, something clinical, something named, never quite settled in her mind until it did. What does this mean? She asked finally, her voice quieter than she expected. The psychiatrist leaned forward slightly. It means your brain has difficulty regulating mood and anxiety in a consistent way. You experience periods of elevated mood and energy and periods of depression alongside chronic anxiety. Elena swallowed. So I'm not just bad at coping. No, the doctor said steadily and kind. You've been coping with something real, and you've actually been doing it for a long time. That landed differently. Not broken, not weak, working very hard without knowing why. She left the office with a folder in her hand and a strange weightless feeling in her chest. Outside, the world looked exactly the same. Cars passed, people talked, someone laughed too loudly across the street. It was disorienting. How could everything be unchanged when everything had just been explained? That that night she sat at her kitchen table, the folder open in front of her, words stared back at her. Mood stabilization, medication options, therapy, sleep hygiene. It all felt clinical distance until she turned to a blank page in her notebook and without overthinking wrote, I am bipolar. Her hand froze. Then underneath it, I have anxiety. She stared at the sentences. They didn't feel true, but they didn't feel false either. They felt unfinished. The next morning, her anxiety woke up before she did. What if this changes everything? What if people see you differently? What if you lose control? Her chest tightened, but this time there was something new alongside the panic, a memory. You've been coping with this every single this something this real. She sat up slowly. Okay, she said out loud, her voice shaky. Then maybe I don't have the fight in the same way anymore. The change didn't happen all at once. They were very small, almost disappointingly small. She set an alarm to take medication. She told one friend, just one, I got diagnosed with bipolar and anxiety. She said, bracing herself. There was a pause, then, okay, I'm here. Elena blinked. That's it. What else should there be? Something in her chest loosened. In therapy, she started understanding things, the productive anxiety that had actually been constant fear, the motivation that sometimes tipped into something unsustainable, the crash she the crashes she blamed on herself instead of recognized as part of a cycle. She began to see patterns not as personal failures, but as signals that didn't make them easy, but it made them understandable. One evening, a few weeks later, she noticed it happening. Her thoughts went speeding up, ideas stacking, that familiar pull to do everything right now. And right behind the anxiety, don't mess this up, she paused just for a second. In the past, she would have followed the energy or tried to crush it entirely. This time, she did something differently. She wrote it down. Finally elevated, also anxious. Then she texted the therapist. She went to bed early. It wasn't dramatic, it wasn't perfect, but it was the first time she had seen it coming. At 30, Elena didn't feel like a new person. She felt like someone who had finally been given the right map. The terrain was the same, hills and valleys, storms and stillness. But now, when the ground shifted beneath her, she didn't immediately assume it was her fault. Sometimes it was just the landscape. Weeks later, she flipped back to the notebook page. I am bipolar. And that is what I would like to talk about in the next few weeks is about being bipolar. I will have different stories on here and different things on here about being bipolar because I am bipolar. Thank you.